All right, let's dive into an idea that pretty much flips the script on how we've thought about progress for decades. It's called ethno-development. And really, it all comes down to a simple but game-changing question.
What if that entire blueprint we've been using for global development was just flawed from the very beginning? It's a huge question, and it's exactly what we're going to unpack today. So, before we get to the new stuff, we have to understand the old way of doing things. For a long time, there was basically one playbook for progress, a kind of one-size-fits-all plan that everyone was expected to follow.
And here's what that old playbook said. The traditional idea of development was basically a race. The goal for non-Western countries was to catch up and become just like the industrialized West. And how did you keep score? Well, it was all about economic growth and modernization. That's it.
Yep, the message couldn't have been clearer. There's only one road to success, and the West has already paved it. So, everyone else, just get in line and start walking.
But here's the thing about a one-size-fits-all plan. It rarely fits anyone perfectly. And in this case, that forced march towards progress didn't just fail to deliver. It came at an absolutely staggering human cost.
And I mean, just look at the fallout here. Instead of creating strong, independent nations, this model often made them more dependent on former colonial powers. It gutted native industries, like the once thriving textile trade in India. It actively sabotaged local efforts to build factories in places like Egypt and Turkey. And, on a personal level, it literally uprooted millions of people and completely tore apart the social fabric of their communities.
So, when a plan fails that badly, people start asking some tough questions. A whole revolution in thinking started to bubble up. And the big question was, what if we've been measuring the wrong thing this whole time? The focus slowly started to shift away from just national wealth and toward the well-being of actual people.
Now, this didn't happen overnight. You can see the seeds being planted way back in the early 20th century. But a huge moment came in the 1980s, when Amartya Sen introduced this idea of human development. He argued that real progress isn't just about growing a country's bank account. It's about expanding what people are actually able to do and be. Then by '96, it was official. Culture wasn't some obstacle to get rid of. It was a central part of the whole process.
You see, underneath all this was a totally new way of looking at society itself. The old structuralist way saw society as a machine, something you could just re-engineer by pulling a few economic levers. But the new constructivist view saw society as a living, breathing culture, a super complex web of values, beliefs, and relationships.
Right. To put it really simply, we stopped trying to treat society as like broken-down cars that just needed a new engine and started to understand that every single one is a unique culture with its own ideas about what a good life even looks like.
And that realization changes everything. Because if societies are cultures, then real lasting change can't be forced on them from the outside. It has to come from within.
This brings us to a really important term, endogenous development. Endogenous sounds a bit fancy, but it just means coming from within. It's development that actually uses a community's own culture and values as the fuel for change. And that's how you get solutions that actually stick.
This quote from the scholar Raman just hits the nail on the head. If development is truly from within, then there's no race, there are no leaders to follow. Each and every society has to carve out its own path forward based on who they are.
And that, finally, brings us to our main event, ethno-development. This is where all that theory gets put into practice. It's the model that takes those from-within principles and puts people, the ethnos, and their specific culture right at the heart of the whole thing.
This table just lays it out so perfectly. The old mainstream approach looks at the whole country and asks, how's the GDP? But ethno-development, it zooms way in, right down to the community level and asks a much more powerful question. What do these specific people need to thrive on their own terms?
So, you're probably wondering, how does this actually work in the real world? Well, the secret ingredient, the key to it all, is a radical shift in roles. People are no longer seen as just passive recipients of aid. They become the main characters in their own story.
And this is what we mean by participation. It's not just about getting a handout at the end. It's about being an active part of the whole process, from designing the project to actually making it happen. The community themselves are in the driver's seat.
And you can see how it works. It starts with the local people themselves saying, here's what we actually need, not what some expert thousands of miles away thinks they need. Then they help design the solutions. They're involved in building them. And the result isn't more dependency. It's self-reliance, because the community has ownership of the entire thing, start to finish.
Because here's the bottom line.
every community on Earth has this deep reservoir of what we call indigenous knowledge, a unique understanding of their land, their people, their problems, their strengths. And if you ignore that knowledge, well, you're not just being inefficient, you're pretty much guaranteeing that your project is going to fail.
So let me leave you with this final thought. Development isn't just something that happens over there in other countries. It's about how any community, anywhere, improves its own well-being. So think about where you live. What's the special local knowledge that exists in your neighborhood, in your town, that an outsider might totally miss? What are the solutions that could only ever come from within?